Hey guys, it's Hubert again. So we started out with our calculator the last time and we made a simple web application, all right? So it was a calculator. Now this time around we added something else, just something small, right? So I have the web calculator solution open. This is the project. So the last time what we did was the adding machine, and this is the ASPX. This is the code that we did the last time around, where we actually did an if else statement, but in this I'm using a switch operator. That's not important. All right. So what we're going to be doing this time around is we're going to be calling a class, right? We're going to be making a class that will essentially be doing all the functions, everything that this was doing right here. We're going to be making an extra file that will be able to pull the heavy load. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to be breaking apart the application. So instead of having everything all in one, we want to be able to manage it properly, right? So we want one file to do all of the calculations and the other file to be doing all of the other work. All right, so we're going to be making what we call a class, right? It's a C# file. So to do that, we right click on our project, we go down to add, and we add a class, right? We see the class. You don't have to worry about any of these at the moment. We simply change the name. Note, I'm leaving the .cs. This is very important. Do not overwrite it. The .cs means it's a CS file, CS class. C#, the CS means C#. All right. So I'm going to click OK, and my class is added. All right. Now there are lots of things to know about classes and them doing the heavy lifting and all of that, but we're not going to get into that right now. What I'm going to do, I'm going to make this a public class. As you can see, it's public, but I'm also going to make it static. Static means I'm going to be able to call this whatever method I make. I'm going to be able to call it from another function. What am I talking about? All right, I'm glad you asked. So what is a method? If you think about, say, a teacher, right? A teacher has different ways that they can teach math. They can use a video, and they can teach math using a video, or they could use the whiteboard and do some math. That's another method of teaching math. Or they can use some rocks, if they want to use some rocks and teach math. So if I want to say 1 + 1 is equal to 2, I can use a video to do that, right? That's one method. Or I can go to the board and I can place 1 and 1 and I say 2. That's another method. And I can get some rocks and I put one rock and another rock, and that makes 2 rocks, right? So all these are methods. It's just simply ways of doing something. So when I say I'm going to be making a class, essentially the class is a teacher. I know it's a weird way, the class is the teacher. The class would be substituted for the teacher. Now the teacher has different ways or different methods that they're going to be using to get something done, right? So that's essentially what I'm saying. I'm going to make a file that has different ways of doing something. So the file is called a class, and the different methods are what we're going to create. Now this method is static, meaning if I go to another file, say for example the teacher has all of these methods, all these ways they can teach math. So when they go to another school, for example, they can say, okay, I'm going to use the rock method to teach math. or I'm going to be using the video method to teach math, or I'm going to be using the Blackboard method to teach math, right? So essentially I'm going to be making some methods, and when the class goes somewhere else, when the teacher goes somewhere else, they're going to be able to use these methods. All right, so C# has a shortcut, C# shortcut. Wow, that's a tongue twister. C# has a shortcut in order for me to make these variables easier to access. So I'm going to make a variable. A variable would be one rock is going to be a variable, another rock is going to be a variable in our example. Or I can say the chalkboard, the chalk is a variable, and the board is a variable. You know, the different things within the method that I'm going to use. All right. So a shortcut that C# uses is you type prop, P-R-O-P, and you press tab, the tab key on your keyboard twice, tab, and then you see this comes up. So this is saying that I'm going to make a variable, and in this variable I want to define a few things. Remember, we were working with decimal, so I'm going to be typing the decimal here. This is just saying this is the type of variable that I want, right? And if I click on tab and tab again, this is where I will name the variable. This is the name of the variable, so I'm going to name it first number, right? And I click enter, press enter. Once I press enter, you see a red squiggly line. Don't worry about that. I'm going to set this number equal to 0. And remember, the reason we say 0 M at the end is just a way C# says this is a decimal. Alright, so you see this squiggly line under here. It's just because this static is at the top of the class. So if I remove this static, the squiggly line will go away, but we're not going to remove this static. What we're going to do instead is we're going to make this one static as well, and the squiggly line will be okay. If you're hearing what's happening outside, it's raining cats and dogs and thunder, so bear with me. All right, so we're going to copy this. Copy and pasting is going to be your best friend in programming, right? So copy, paste, and we're going to be calling this one second number. All right, and we're going to set that to 0, a decimal 0. All right, so we're going to make our first method. We already say, okay, we want to use these two variables, right? So in whatever method that we're going to use to teach math in our example, we are going to be using these two things. So if I'm using the video, if I'm teaching math by video, I'm going to be using the first number and second number. If I'm teaching math on the board, I'm going to be using a first number and second number. If I'm teaching math with rocks, I'm going to be using a first number and a second number. You get it? Those are the variables that will be used. Alright, so let's go and create our first method. We're going to be a public static decimal because we want a decimal value, and we're going to be adding this number. Okay, so when we create it, you basically just look. I'm gonna explain as I go along. So we have added. This is what we want to do. This is what we want to call the method. We want to call it add. So what do I want to add? Right, I want to add a first number, and I want to add a second number. Right, these variables, these names, first num, second num, they can be anything you want them to be. All right, so that's what I choose to call them, first num and second num. And when this happens, when the person clicks on add, when they call this method, say when you add the first number and the second number, what happens? It gives you an answer, right? And the answer it gives you is the first number plus whatever the first number plus the second number is. So when you add something, this is the name you want to give it. You add what? These two numbers. Now I'm going to show you why we have this. This will make sense in a few minutes when you see why we have these two things right here. Okay, so we have our first number and we have our second number, and this, folks, is our first method. It's as simple as that. It's a first method in creating a class. All right. So moving right along, we're going to be creating our second method. So let me just copy and paste. Remember I said copy and pasting. It's good and bad to copy and paste, because if you have something that's incorrect, you are copy and pasting an error. So be careful how you copy and paste, right? So I'm going to be making these methods. So the second one will be subtract. The third one, and in subtract we still need a first number and a second number, but we change the sign to minus. The third one we're going to multiply first number. We're going to multiply first number and a second number, and the value, whatever the value will be, it's going to be multiplied together, right? And the fourth one we're going to divide a first number and a second number, and to divide the symbol is slash. All right, so as it is, this is our first class, this is our helper. So what we're going to be doing, we're going to be taking the load off of the class that we had before. We're going to be taking the load off. So let me save this. We're going to be taking the load off of that. We're going to be taking the load off of our where is it, our adding machine, right? The adding machine CS. We're going to be taking the load off of it, right? So instead of having this, let me just go ahead and let me keep this, right? Yours may look a little bit different, and as a matter of fact, I'm going to be showing you, I'm going to be deleting all of this, and as a matter of fact, I'm just going to comment it. I'm just going to be commenting it out. Comment, right? Okay. If OPTR is equal to plus, if our operator is equal to plus, and our operator is coming from our, let me see, our design view. Remember our design view, how we did it? We said that these are operators. So add is equal to plus, subtract is equal to minus sign, multiply is equal to asterisk, and the divide is a forward slash. All right. So we're going to be saying if the operator is equal to the plus sign, then we're going to be calling our method, and our method is called calculate. C# has what we call IntelliSense. So as you start typing, you see a bunch of helper stuff coming up. Now it knows that we just created a class called calculate, and it puts it in our options as something that we can see. So you don't have to type all the word calculate, right? You don't have to type it all out. So I'm going to be pressing tab because it was highlighted, and then I'm going to press a dot. And as you can see, these are the methods. Remember, in the analogy of the teacher, so now the teacher is in a new school, this new environment, and the teacher has three ways or a couple ways of teaching math. First, the teacher has this method, and this method we're going to be calling add. And then remember, we had our two brackets. So what it is saying is, hey, you have this add function. Now this add method takes two properties, right? What are the two properties? It takes a first number and a second number. So what are the first number and the second number? They're here, num1 and num2, and these are coming from our input boxes that we created before. All right, so we're going to be saying num1, and as you can see, it's highlighted there, and I'm going to be saying num2. Right? So I want to say that my result is going to be equal to num1, calculate, add num1 and num2. All right, make sense? So If the operator is not plus but subtract, our result would be equal to what? Calculate dot, which one? It's going to be equal to calculate dot subtract, because it is a minus symbol, a subtract symbol, the dash. And we're going to be saying, we're going to be calling the same two numbers, right? The numbers don't change, right? If you think about it, the numbers really don't change. The only thing that changes is the operator, and the other thing that changes is our method, how we want these numbers to interact. So with subtract, we want to use a subtract method in our calculator class, and we're going to be subtracting what? We're going to be subtracting number 2 from number 1. And we go to our, if this is an asterisk, we're going to be saying result equal calculate dot multiply, and again we're going to be multiplying the two numbers, num1, num2. Alright, and if it is not any of those above, it must be the final thing that's there, which is or divide. So we're going to be saying num1 plus, not plus, num1 and num2. Alright, so if you think about it, we're only going to be working with two variables, right? The two things that are constant in all our calculations are the two numbers, number 1 and number 2. The only thing that changes is how we put these two numbers together. Are we going to be adding them? Are we going to be subtracting them, multiplying them, or dividing them? All right. Now, if we look at this, it makes a lot more sense than what we had earlier, right? So we're saying that if the operator is equal to plus, then I'm going to say calculate and add these two numbers. If the operator is equal to subtract, it's going to be calculate and subtract these two numbers. If it's equal to an asterisk, it's going to be calculate, multiply. If it's equal to, if it's not equal to any of these, then it must be divide, right? If it's not plus, minus, or asterisk, it must be divide. So we're going to say calculate, divide number 1 and number 2. All right. So let's save this and let's see if our calculator still functions. All right. So I'm going to be, all right. So our app is up. Let's see if it runs. So we have our first number, which is, let's say 20 and 10. If we add these two numbers, it's going to be equal to 30. So it works correctly. The first one is correct. And 20 minus 10 is equal to, number should be 10, correct. And we say 20 multiplied by 10 should be 200, if I know my math, okay. And lastly, if you say 20 divided by 10 is equal to 2. So there you have it. Our calculator functions well, and it functions with us using a helper class. And remember, a class is essentially a helper, right? It helps you to break up your entire application into different manageable components. So we want one file to focus on this. We don't want it to be focusing on anything else. We just want it to calculate, right? And how it goes about calculating is that it uses different methods, different ways of doing the calculation. So it has a way to add it, it has a way to subtract, has a way to multiply, and it has a way to divide. And these are called methods, right? And once we finish making these methods and returning the answer, say when I add the answer return, is going to be first number plus second number. These are the variables, and I'm going to be putting it into our function. We're going to be putting it into our adding machine page, or adding machine C# page behind the code, or code behind page, and we're going to be using it. So how do we use it? We say calculator. We need to call the name of the class. This is saying, hey, you, what do you do? Hey, I have these things that I do. I know how to add, I know how to subtract, I know how to multiply and divide. Okay, then show me what you got. I want you to work to do it for me. So what do? We say calculate, and calculate will say, hey, I can add. And calculate say I can subtract, and I subtract the numbers, and we got our responses. All right, so there you have it. I hope you understood. It went a little bit longer than I expected, but I really wanted you to get the concept, how it works. And remember, see, programming is life. It's not that hard. It's just how you think about solving a problem. All right, so until next time, bye.